Hey, good morning, everybody. Jim Lillibridge, one of the pastors here at Urbana United Methodist Church. It's great to see you. It's another Monday, and I trust last week was a good week for you. And again, we just keep trucking through this coronavirus pandemic. And so I hope we're seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. It's not a train coming at us, it's the light on the way out. We're moving through this and beyond this. And so, it's good that you're with us today, and I have a special guest with us today. This Mike Stewart. Mike is recently retired after 43 years and 4 months at First Christian Church here in Urbana. Now, Mike is an awesome friend of mine. I've been here, my wife and I, 9 years, and the first pastor that reached out to me as the new kid on the block was Brother Mike. And since then, we discovered that we like Skyline Chili. We even like White Castle, Crabbles, but there are other very nutritious foods that we have learned that we share together. So it's not uncommon for us to have to run to Huber Heights to Skyline to discuss business so we can write off our lunch, it's business. But anyway, I have also developed, I don't know if I developed it, but I called Mike the Pope of Urbana. And the reason why I did that after I first met him, found out how many years he's served here in Urbana at First Christian Church, I realized that nobody else had served that long. So when you're the longest tenured person, you deserve an appropriate title. So he got the title Pope of Urbana. And that's how I continue to have introduced him to different people in the 9 years that we've lived here. And now that he's retired, he was thinking, okay, you're going to have to give somebody else the title Pope. Well, no, it doesn't fit anybody else. So now Pope Emeritus Mike of Urbana. So he gets that title now. I mean, he's earned it. Think about that. 43 years, 4 months. That's a long time. And so, but Brother Mike, it's good to have you with us today. And with that astounding introduction, so Mike, 43 years, 4 months. Over that time, I'm sure you've got a lot of stories, a lot of experiences, but knowing that one of the purposes of our Motivational Monday conversations is to offer some kind of help, that reminders of the help and hope we have in Jesus Christ. So, what are some of the things in all those years that would be things that, through your experience and acquired wisdom, would like to offer our folks here this morning?
Well, first, I just want to say that that was quite the glowing introduction. I don't think I've ever had one like that before. But I have so much appreciated your friendship through these 9 years. And you've walked with me through some dark times that I had personally in my personal life. And I appreciate that. And Christopher, one of my favorite young people in the world.
They can't see behind the thing, but he's the one operating everything.
That's right. He's don't pay any attention to the man behind the curtain.
Yeah, but, we do have a millennial here to help us figure out what to do, right?
And Christopher, like a few other millennial young people I know, gives me hope for the future. Everyone wants to put down millennials, but Christopher and folks like him are a bright light for our future. So anyhow, I'm glad to be here. Now, what was your question again? I had to remember what I wanted to say, and now I can't remember what you asked me. What do I have to say about hope for the future?
Well, after your 43 and 4 months experience through all of that, and in these pandemic times that are, they've not been replicated in our lifetime, right?
Correct.
Even my 91-year-old mother says, I've never seen anything like this. So, given that, what are some words of help and hope that you might, just based on all your years of experience in ministry?
Well, I think one of the things that, I kind of when you're old, you got more time behind you than you do in front of you. And now that I'm retired and look back over my ministry, am I supposed to be looking at you, or look at the camera? Okay. One of the things that I find now is that things over 43 years and 4 months of ministry that seemed to be mountainous at the time now are not very much with perspective. And I think that is going to be true with this pandemic. Right now it's big, it's in the news every day. Right now we happen to be going through a resurgence of some spikes in our state. Clark County, for instance, is not a good place to be. But I think with time, now not if you lose a loved one to the pandemic, it's not going to diminish. I don't mean to diminish that. But this, in reality, when all is said and done and the smoke clears, 2 years from now, nobody will be thinking about this, I don't believe. Because like everything else in life, there will be something else to be dealing with at that point in time. And so, it's not a biblical phrase, but the phrase, "this too shall pass," is a very real concept in life. And so, I would just encourage people, God is in control. He is in charge. He did give you a brain. Wash your hands, wear a face mask when you're in public, do social distancing. Do not have the false spirituality that God is your vaccine, faith is your vaccine. There are plenty of Christians who have died in this pandemic and plenty of preachers who've died in this pandemic. But just use common sense. Do what the hell people tell you to do, and we will get through this. I would also say, ministries are very much it's people. It's what ministry is all about. So to not be able to be with people as a minister for the last 3 months of my ministry was a very difficult thing for me. Now, I do some social media, I do some texting and things like that, and younger people are more at home with that. But for me, it's people. It's like going to Skyline with Jim and sitting down across the table and being in the car with him while he drives and having my faith be built and pray to Jesus that we get there safe and we get back safe. But just being with people is the thing. So again, try to find a way. I'm spending a lot more time in the last few months of my ministry. I spent a lot more time on the telephone with people. And social media is a great thing when you can FaceTime folks. Man, that's a wonderful thing. And I have an 80-year-old aunt, my mother's sister, and every year, 4th of July weekend, we have a family reunion, have had for 30 years. This year, they're going to have the family reunion. My son has been very sick. In February, we almost died. I would like very much to go see my family that's spread out all over the place, but we can't do that. We just think it's too high a risk to take our son there, or for me to go and be with the family and potentially bring something back. So my 80-year-old aunt, God bless her, one of her daughters-in-law showed her how to do FaceTime. So I'm FaceTiming my 80-year-old aunt in the hills of Kentucky. And so all those things are great things. So try to maintain contact with people. Try to focus more on what's good and positive in this than the negative. Hear the news, but 30 minutes of news, my personal opinion, is enough for anybody. Turn it off and go do something else. Because honestly, news is not a positive thing. If it bleeds, it leads. And the negativity is what sells. So just half an hour, find out what's going on in the nation, then go on and do something else. That's my advice.
And that was awesome advice right there. If it bleeds, it leads. And his aunt from the hills of Kentucky. That's pretty awesome too.
I almost wore my Kentucky shirt today, but I didn't.
Yeah. And then faith is not a vaccine. Now, boom, we've got some awesome quotes here from the Pope Emeritus of Urbana this morning. So that was awesome. I mean, that's some very good suggestions. And this too shall pass. While that phrase has been around for a long time, the truth is,
This too
shall pass.
If heaven and earth will pass away, coronavirus will pass away.
Yes, amen to that. And so, hey, thank you, Mike. That was great. And update on your son. He was really, but he's doing well now, right? It was scary there for.
Yes, it was scary. He's in the hospital, Riverside Hospital in Columbus, for 15 days, intensive care for 5 days, almost died. Had 2 different kinds of pneumonia. I did not know there were 2 different kinds of pneumonia. There's 40 some kinds. I did not know.
Yeah.
He had 2 kinds of pneumonia and was septic, which means he had infection all through his body. We'd been to the doctor with him on Friday. The doctor did a chest x-ray, it was clear, did a flu swab, it was negative. Said basically he's got a virus, take him home, keep doing what you're doing. That was Friday. Monday we're in the ER here in Urbana and then transported to Riverside in Columbus. But 4 months later, about 2 weeks ago, he got back, finally all the way back to what he had been. So we praise the Lord for that. And we credit him because, we credit the prayers of the people like Jim, who I texted. Jim's friendship and I texted Jim and Brian Wan, the preacher at the First Baptist Church. I was doing the pastoral call thing in Springfield at a person in the Masonic home, and he had been not very well that morning when I left, so I excused myself to go to the bathroom, sent a text while in the bathroom, how's Bub? That's what we call him, how's Bub? And the text response was ER. That's all the text said. So I went out and dismissed myself and got in the car and sent a joint text to Brian and what's your name again? Jim. And by the time I got to the hospital, this is great. I don't know if you know this or not. By the time I got to the hospital, Brian was sitting in the chair next to my wife in the emergency room, back in the room, and it had prayer with my wife already. So that's just a great thing. So anyhow, prayer. We say that's why our boy David is alive today. So, but he's doing really well now.
Great.
He's spoiled rotten. He's 33, but he's developmentally delayed. He's 10 to 14 months developmentally. So he just thinks he has to be held all the time now, and mom and dad have nothing else to do. But and so now that I'm retired, I just sit with him a lot.
Yeah. There you go.
Give mom a break.
Yes. Yeah. That's excellent.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
But that's how awesome is that. And that's a great story because I remember when you texted me that, and then it wasn't looking good, and it looked very grave, and yet, like you said, the power of prayer, and here he is, and you guys get to hang out.
Yep.
So, and give Mama a break.
That's right.
That's awesome. And so I'll tell you what, I didn't tell you I was going to do this, but the last thing, if there was one thing that you've learned, if you haven't already said it, in 43 years and 4 months, if there is one, hey, this is what of all those years, this is the one thing that I've learned and have learned to live by, what would that be?
Wow.
Y'all see the steam coming out of his ears? That's why I wanted to surprise him with that one, because it's cool when he really thinks the steam comes out.
The clutch is smoking right now as I'm trying to think about
now if you're looking, you can't quite see it. Believe me, if you can't trust me, who can you trust? It's coming out. All right.
Well, I will go back to when I was 16, and I was not raised in the church. My mother and father had been raised in the church, and the part of Appalachia that they came from, whatever stripe of the church you were in, that was only people going to heaven. No other church member was going to heaven in any other kind of church. And so my dad was the son of a Baptist preacher, and my mom was the daughter of a Christian church elder. And they just could not come to agreement upon where to go to church. So I grew up not going to church. But at 16, a friend of mine invited me to go to church, and I went, and going ever since. And what the scripture that spoke to me the most then is what I'll share with you now, is John 10:10. I came that they may have life and have it abundantly. Jim, ministry is not always easy. And you've heard all the jokes about, wish I only worked one day a week.
I've never heard those.
Wish I only worked 1 hour a week, when you play golf the other 6 days, you fish the other 6 days. I've heard all that stuff. And there's a lot of heartache in the ministry. there's heartache in having a developmentally disabled son.
Mm-hmm.
But Jesus does give abundant life.
Yes.
It doesn't look like you might think it would look, but he gives abundant life. And he gives abundance even in the midst of sometimes awful circumstances. If I may, just for a minute, we were taken to the hospital with our son just this last time. They transported him, they loaded him up on the cart. They put a CPAP machine on him to help him breathe. The doctor came out and said, when you get to Riverside, they're going to put him on a ventilator. Now, I'm no doctor, but I've hung around hospitals for 43 years and 4 months. And I know that when you go on a ventilator, that's not good. And so we were pretty terrified all the way over there.
Absolutely.
But it turns out the ER doctor had some experience with a developmentally disabled child. So God blessed us there.
Yes.
When we got to Riverside and got to the intensive care unit, one of the nurses said, he reminds me of my son. She had a developmentally disabled son. She wasn't able to keep him at home. He was more involved than my son physically. And then, there was like a speech therapist, and so God just continued in the midst of all that to give us people. Now those little things spoke to us about God's presence with us, even through our son's sickness. And so even that, I consider that to be abundance of God. We weren't left, we weren't forsaken, to deal with this. We were over there. His flu was really bad then, and we weren't able to have visitors for 15 days. And everybody was wearing a mask that came in and all that kind of thing. That was all new to us then. But even in the midst of all that, God was so good to us. So I guess that's what he is always giving abundant life. Always. Sometimes it's a little different to recognize. It looks different than we think, but it's always there.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, well, that's awesome. And because when you talk about that abundant life, you're talking about the reality that the abundant part is God is always with you abundantly in life. So even in that situation with your son, even in situations that you look around and it sure doesn't seem abundant, right? He's offering that.
Right.
John 10:10, man, that's a great promise. And that was what you remembered at 16.
60.
And you're still able to remember back then? Oh,
I can't remember much
awesome.
anymore. I have advice for you in retirement. Invest in Post-it notes. Make notes about everything.
Get some
Stick them
stock
around.
right now in Post-it notes.
There you go. Buy stock and Post-it notes. It's going up.
All right, I like it. I like it. Well, Brother Mike, hey, it's been awesome to have you with us today. Thank you for coming over and letting us share time this morning with everyone, with you. Blessings on you as you continue retirement, and David, Sonia, that just enjoy retirement in abundance. Whatever that's going to look like, right?
Yeah.
All right. And so, hey, again, we appreciate Mike spending time with us today. If you're in Urbana and you see him, please reach out to him and greet him with the words, the Pope Emeritus of Urbana. Okay, if you would. And remember, safe distancing, so only wave, don't try to hug him or anything like that. And so, but again, it's great to be with you. God bless you. Remember, God loves you. We love you. Have a great week, and we'll see you next Monday.